All right. Well, welcome to the first in our webinar series for the 2025-26 school year. I'm Jana Henry Funderburk. I will be your host. My co-host Tyler DeLong is not here with us tonight because he is in Italy. Um, but we are excited instead to have Christy Ross Clausen with us. Christy, welcome.
Thank you, Jen. I'm really happy to be here. And Tyler owes me a beer or two for doing this for him.
For sure. um, so our topic tonight is training and specifically training that one um needs to make a go of it in this industry, right? So, Christy, what does our industry need? What kind of jobs are there
Gosh.
and why should we do those jobs?
Okay, that's like about a 4-hour talk, and we've only got 60 minutes to do this. So here's the great news about this. The number of jobs that have technical theater skills as a foundation is almost unlimited. I was working with a group of high school students 2 summers ago, and we just started naming things, and that led to one thing and another. We had over 100 different job titles on the list before we gave up, and stagehand was not included on that because that was just the given of if you know how to do these things, you should be a stagehand. But it's more now about the global entertainment industry. It's not just about theater, it's about all of the other things that people do and go and see and experience in their free time to entertain themselves, to educate themselves, to enlighten themselves, and to share with our family members. If you think about the great memories that we have of going to see shows when we were small kids, and you want to do that with your children too and pass that on. So all of those things have the skills that we teach in technical theater. And that's why we're working so hard to bring this into the schools and to ensure that we've got good foundational information out there.
That's awesome. I totally agree with you. I've sent three design production alums to grad school for go to law school. You know, absolutely. Skill sets are really transferable. So that's really great. Um, so we have talked on here in the past about choosing a college, and how a high school student, what they might think about in terms of what they want out of their college experience. Um, but there may also be people who are ready to be out of school for a while and maybe don't want to do a traditional 2 year or 4 year college experience. And so for those individuals, how do we go about finding training? We're gonna play speed round here. Not speed,
Okay.
because really take your time. But let's go through some of the places that offer training and tell me a little bit about each of those.
Okay.
The first one is unions. How would I go about getting training from a professional union?
Beautiful. So the IATSE is the Stagehands Union in the United States, Canada, Guam, and Puerto Rico. And to become a represented worker for the IA, which then makes you eligible for all of the training that the IA offers, which you don't have to be an IA member, you just have to be a represented worker. In other words, you work under the auspices of an IA contract at some point in time within the last year or so. So you call up your local IA or you find out what your local IA is that has the subject that you want to do. So wardrobe sometimes has a separate IA local than what stagehands. Film is different than that. There's treasurers and ticket office and box office people. There's folks that work in ballparks. It all depends upon what it is that you want to do and where you're located geographically. So you find out who has the jurisdiction for you and you get a hold of them and say, "Hi, I'm here. I'd like to come and work with you. Here's my resume. These are the things that I know I can do walking in, and these are the things I'm interested in learning more about." We know because we had some really good research done by one of our USITT friends. We know 30% of live events workers did not return post COVID. 30% of a workforce that was already pretty iffy on numbers.
Mhm.
So there's a huge demand for people with these skills and wanting to learn these skills. I joke that if you can show up on time, clean and sober with your tools and a good attitude, I can teach you everything else you need. And that's sort of true. But I also hope that when you're walking in the door, you have some fundamentals like being able to read a tape measure, actually being able to read and write. So if I give you a manufacturer's manual, you can make sense out of it. And
Mhm.
now, because so much of the training that exists is online, being able to use a laptop or phone in order to be able to get the information that you need from the more formal training things. So the IATSE, once you become a represented worker, opens a bunch of doors for additional training. One of the things the IA has is a partnership with Avixa. And AVIXA is to AV World like USITT is to theater world. It's the professional association for folks in that industry. And people go, well, AV and theater are the same. Oh, there's a lot of overlap. Guess who designs all our performing arts spaces? Folks do. So AVIXA's training programs are the fundamental kinds of things that go through audio, lighting, video, projection, LED walls, and also now all of that gets put together through computer networks. So those are the foundation programs that AVIXA offers. And then as an IA represented worker, you can also take all of the AVIXA advanced training that they've got available online. I would estimate, and I don't know this number for sure, but I would estimate it's a couple hundred hours worth of really quality training that's out there. And Avixa puts it together and keeps it updated with an in-house staff of educational folks that are fabulous. So that's one of the things that the IA has available. Another thing that they have is the IA Training Trust Fund courses that are available online. Most of those are related to safety things like firearm safety on set. And I say that with the caveat of their things are aimed at the film and TV industry. There are things you can get away with safely on a film or TV set that we can't safely do in a theater. So go into those
Because of
classes
that
knowing that,
audience dynamic,
right, there's
right?
an audience. Oftentimes we're working with children. I've kind of put down the edict that if I'm doing educational theater, I do not ever want to see any kind of gun that can be fired in that setting because I've seen the results of that going bad way too often. And even on professional sets with licensed armorers, people who theoretically are supposed to know what they're doing, we've still had folks getting killed. So just know that it's, again, fundamental information that gives you the basic knowledge, but not necessarily applies absolutely everywhere that you're at. But they also have really good information about fire safety and fire codes and how those work, things about set etiquette, basic fundamentals of theater and how to deal with things in a theater space, information about unions and how they are formed and what they can and cannot do for you. So being an IA stagehand or being an IA represented worker is a great way to get a foot into the industry.
That's great. Like you said, there is such a need right now. There really is.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that's great. Okay. The next one on my list, since you mentioned USITT, the United States Institute for Theater Technology, right? Conferences,
Right. And
LDI.
yep. I think USITT probably has the best conference. That's my personal bias coming out. But I know that's the one that I go to where I know I'm going to learn something new when I walk away. The training that is offered there literally is from the best in the industry. You've got people that are doing it every day, working with that equipment every day, the state of the art things every day. So, as a way to keep up with a very rapidly changing industry, USITT's conference is one of the best ways to do that. LDI, if you're into lighting, that's a fabulous place to go. They also have more about networking now and LED walls. Anything that's got a camera lit emphasis to it, you're going to be able to find out about that at LDI. One that we don't often talk about that I've really loved is NAM, the National Association of Music Merchants. So
Mhm.
if you like concerts, all of the things that have to do with concerts and music performance, all of that is covered there. And
Excellent.
it is one of the most literally entertaining conferences you'll ever go to because they've got musicians playing all over the places you're walking through. You'll hear classical or piano in one place, and you turn around, there's some guy doing reggaeton. You turn around, there's somebody doing jazz. It's just a marvelous place to be. Other conferences that people don't necessarily think about too much. So Avixa, that I talked about before, has InfoComm, which is their big conference, and they have a live events section of that that has a lot of the same exhibitors that we have at USITT or at NAM. So if you can't get to one of those, look at the other conferences that are adjacent to that and see if there's one that's possible in your area that you might be able to get to.
Excellent. That's a great idea. I think sometimes if people haven't attended one of these conferences, what you might not know is that while there are certainly lectures, sort of formal for people sitting behind a desk talking, kind of panels, that there are also many things that are hands-on.
Mhm.
We have a number of laboratories. So if you want to learn to solder, there's a soldering lab. If you want to do some rigging, there's a rigging lab. Um, if you just want to play with some soundboards, like and figure out some sound things, right? There's a sound lab. And there are people, as you said, there are people staffing those who know exactly what they're doing. They know what they're talking about, and they're able to provide insight, I think, into either like, oh, the thing that we've been doing in my school is wrong, or it's specific to that venue,
Right.
in our school, right? But bigger picture kind of things. Meet those manufacturers that are there,
Mhm.
right? I think people would be surprised how much generally those people they're there just to talk to people and tell you about their products and that kind of thing. And so they are just as interested in speaking to a young person as they are, somebody who has many, many years in this industry.
And
So
you mentioned manufacturers. Sure, which is one of the big microphone manufacturers, their online training for microphones. Like if you ever needed to learn about historical microphones, how they work, how the polar pandas work, why you need to have this or that, or how you should hold on to a source, not a source for a SM58. Should you hold on to that microphone that everybody uses to make it work the best, and why, if you hold it differently, how that's going to affect how it sounds. Manufacturer training really, really came up well during COVID. It kind of gave us all a chance to sit back and go, all right, what do we
that's
need? We need to treat
yeah,
people with more respect. We need to think about how we intentionally work with race and color and creed and backgrounds and disabilities. What can we do to make this whole world better? And one of the things that came out of that was excellent manufacturer training. So
that's
if you've got a piece of equipment in your school that you don't know about, find the manual, get a hold of the manufacturer, go to their website. A lot of them have really great videos that you can just learn from that. I have a student who knew nothing about ETC boards. He was a stage management student of mine. On Friday afternoon, I went, oh, you're going to be running the board on Monday night. Okay, I need you to know how to do park and record and go to, and highlighted a couple of things on the YouTube videos. He watched all of the YouTube videos for EOS over the weekend. And when I went to the gentleman who was our lighting designer for that show, I went, how's Jimmy doing? He's like, well, he's catching on. He'll be okay. And Jimmy's job that next summer was to be the ETC intern in New York City. So
yeah,
manufacturer training can literally make a career for you. I've seen it happen.
absolutely. Even, I will find you have a machine in front of you that you don't know how to use it. You have a tool that you're not sure exactly what this thing does. If you can find a name on it, um, somebody out there has probably put up a YouTube video of, you know, um, a student who was using, a die press, and was like, I don't know. And I was like, Gold Star they have fabulous videos. Go to their page. I do want to caution there. I think one thing is go to the source go to the
Right.
source, right? Go to the manufacturer's page. If the manufacturer is pointing you toward an individual, by all means, but um, there are a lot of subpar experts in the online sphere. So we want to be careful about who we're engaging with and those learning from.
One
But
of the things that you can look for is what places have they presented, because most of the conferences are pretty good about vetting the people that are presenting there.
yeah.
I've served as a reviewer where you get a list of the sessions that people are proposing and you go through and say, I've never heard of this person before. Well, maybe we team them up with somebody who has presented before. Maybe they've
Uh-huh.
got knowledge and expertise that's going to be helpful here. Or maybe they're just somebody who's trying to get bunch of views on YouTube and they've got you mixing, I don't know, toilet paper with sand to build an outhouse out of, whatever. They do crazy things just to get the views.
I know.
And it's not necessarily safe for the kind of thing we need to do in theater. So
Yeah.
stick with the people you know you can trust or where they send you. Yes.
Yeah, those manufacturers they know their products. They know their products inside and out. Um, in that same vein, I'm gonna say distributors, right? Those known sellers of our
Yep. I encourage people to know your local theater distributor, know your local vendors, know the people that build and make things in your state. I'm a little spoiled here in Wisconsin because I get ETC 2 hours away, and I've got Mud Trust just down the road, and we've got Full Compass, which is one of the big vendors that pretty much anything I can imagine that I would want, I could probably buy from an in-state. Blizzard's here also. There's some other companies too, a bunch of good rigging folks, and the advantage of having a local vendor who you know and who knows you is when stuff goes pear shaped and you're in the middle of tech, you can make that phone call and they'll come and knock on your door with that replacement part that you didn't know that you needed because you just described what the problem was, but they figured out what the solution was.
Mhm.
And they're going to have your back. Also, that's helping to keep that money local. And it means you're not going to be shipping those things halfway across the country. Now, there are times when it's better for you to buy that big box of tape from wherever and have it shipped, perhaps. And there are certain things you might not be able to get local, like you might not be able to get drapery or pyro or lighting equipment or whatever. But as much as you can, try to work with your local vendors, at least give them the first chance to get your business. You'll find that we've got some really, really fabulous people in places that you'd never dream of.
And again, I think as a young person trying to get started in this industry, go introduce yourself. Go in, introduce yourself. I'm interested. I want to learn more. Um, I think you'll be surprised. They may say, "Well, come on back here. Let me show you something." Uh, I think sometimes we think like those people, but they're the same people, right? They were also high school students
Right.
trying to figure out how to get into this industry. Um, and I think there's a soft spot that many people have
And
for
those are
trying to
career
start out.
paths also, right? So if you graduate and you don't want to be a performer, you want to have your own nights and weekends to be home with your kids or raise a family or do religious things or whatever it is that you want to do, working for a vendor like that or working for a manufacturer might be a fabulous job choice for you.
Absolutely. And those jobs, while, not necessarily like tend to come with retirement benefits and healthcare and some of those things that are a little tougher to come by when you're first starting out. So, I always think people have, health conditions, right? Who know, like, I'm going to get booted off my parents' insurance and I have to have a job that, provides that.
Mhm.
Those are fabulous opportunities. And sometimes, there are some that are a nice combination. Maybe you work for a company, but you also get to do some travel, or it can be a really fulfilling uh, job path. Absolutely. So, um, all right, let's talk a little bit about the difference between a certificate and a certification. And I promise y'all this is going somewhere. But
Okay. Here's the deal with these. So we actually only have a handful of certifications in the theater world. They are all ETCP because they're the only people that does certifications specifically for theater.
which stands for
That's the Entertainment Technician Certification Program,
yes.
ETCP, put together by ESTA, the Entertainment Services Technology Association. So ESTA.org, you go to their website, and they they started doing this about 15 years ago. I won't get into the great gory detail of what happened, but basically, we quickly realized if we created standards and um, criteria for us to measure ourselves by, that was much better than having somebody who doesn't understand our world coming in to do that for us, like a governmental entity saying you need to do this, which is the case in some places. So the ETCP rigging uh, certifications were the first ones. So we have both theater and arena rigging. And then on the electrical side, they've got ETCP electrician and then also portable power distribution, which is people that are running the generators. So those are the ETCP certifications. You have to have worked in the industry for a certain amount of time. Your education, bona fide education, can count towards that. But it's generally, depending upon what you've been doing, if you've been working in the industry for 10 years, you probably will qualify to take one of the ETCP exams. And it's a really good bonus for your employer for you to do that because they will often get a kickback on their insurance or a lesser insurance rate because they're hiring people that have demonstrated a certification. It's a written exam, online, legit, um, standardized exam is the word I was looking for. And the questions were put together by subject matter experts in that area. Believe me, when the rigging guys get together, it's no holds barred. They are picky with each other. I've heard debates over whether it should be should, shall, or shan't. Like, I didn't even realize that was a word. Okay. So that's what we've got for our world. There's also on the AV side, the CTS, Certified Technical, CTS, Certified Technical, oh, we'll edit it in. Um, I write questions for the exam. I should know this. CTS, Certified Technical Specialist. There we go. The CTS for AV, and then there's a CTS-I for the installers and a CTS-D for designers of AV systems. So those are ANSI accredited, which is a little bit more fancy than the ETCP stuff is, but it's basically the same thing. You've got a room full of experts who put the questions together. They all get run through a piloting process to make sure that the questions are reliable and valid, and then they get put in the question pool, and the question pool changes from time to time depending on a host of factors. So those are the certifications that we have. Then there are certificates. And the trick is there are some companies, some manufacturers that are saying, here is your certification, but it's not legally a certification. And that does matter in a court of law. A
Yeah.
certificate legally says you paid attention, maybe you passed a little 10 question quiz at the end of the thing. Here you are, you're a certified,
Showed up.
but you actually have a certificate, not a certification. So it's important that you know which one that you're getting. And if you're hiring, it's very important that you understand the difference between those also, because it could come back to haunt you down the line. However, all knowledge is good knowledge.
Mm,
Knowledge can never be taken away from you. Nobody can crawl inside your brain and steal it away. So don't ever be bashful about going and getting training and knowledge if you have that opportunity. It's amazing the doors that have opened for me just because I sat in a class one day and went, oh, I'll never need to know this. And then 6 years later, oh, I should have paid more attention. Oops. Okay.
mm. Yes. And what I find more and more as I reach magical middle age, is that I start to see connections between you know, and I was telling you, the connection between math and
Yes.
textiles
Oh,
is
yeah.
huge, right? And it's only as we learn these things that come from all over that we start to really see what the big picture is. And um, I think the people who can see those big pictures, right, sometimes are people who they go, Maybe you should be in charge. You have good ideas." So learning lots of skills can sometimes be a way to advance as well.
Right. And things that, like, I took an acoustics class in college because I needed a lab class and it sounded like fun, and it was. It was a great class and lots of fun. But
Mm,
when I started working in AV world, having that knowledge of how acoustics works in a space, that was a lifesaver.
right.
So having the vocabulary to be able to speak to people intelligently about a topic, especially
Mhm.
something that is as somewhat esoteric as acoustics or photometrics, which is even more rare.
Yes.
Somebody who understands how to do that.
Mhm.
Those are really great skills to have.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. That's really great. Um, so the next thing we want to talk about on our list here is um your new job.
Well, yeah. So we were talking earlier before we started the recording about this, about the fact that there are so many different places now to get education and to get quality things. But it's been difficult because you don't always have a way that they've been vetted, where you're absolutely certain if you go to this source, you're always going to get good things. And Tyler brought me on to help him redo the one shot training videos. He and his dad put those together along with some friends during COVID because, hey, it was COVID, nothing else to do. Let's take some cell phone cameras and go down to the local theater and shoot some video, teach how people how to do rigging. And as I was going through editing the scripts for those, there was one sentence where John, Tyler's dad, called it a batten, a pipe, and a bar in the same sentence. And I went, pick one. Okay, we're going to do this. We're going to check and make sure the standards are correct. We're going to make sure the terminology is correct. We're going to put it all together. And then when we shot the videos, yeah, I'd say about 95% of what I put on the page made it to it. The other 5% was things that the guys added in as we were doing the recordings. And that's okay, right? They're giving their personal touch, and everybody on there is a rigger. I think all of them were ETCP certified. I think I'm the only one in the video who's not. And Tyler and I were talking about ways that we could get that set of videos to a larger audience. And I was explaining to him how frustrated I was because I do a lot of work at the high schools, and we have a lot of really good hearted, well intended, hardworking people who just don't know that they don't know about some of the technical things. And the tech is changing so rapidly, it's impossible for them to keep up. So we
Mhm.
were talking about things that we could do to take the videos and help to support the K-12 schools and the teachers that are there. And then what do we do to support our college friends, right? I've taught college level also. So talked about it different ways that we might be able to handle it. Should it be for profit, nonprofit? And finally decided that we should have a nonprofit. So Tyler founded the DeLong Foundation. It is a nonprofit entity, so it can take donations. And the reason we decided to go that way is we wanted to be able to make it possible for just about anybody to be able to take the classes. The classes are priced very reasonably. We've set a particular price in mind. I'm not going to say what it is because this video will hopefully be out there for a long, long time.
Right.
And we're actually hoping to bring the prices down a little bit as things go. But we've got a host of things that we're working on. Tyler, because he has a bunch of presentations that we've done at a variety of conferences, he's going to do some of those online. And so we're starting out with arena lead rigger training and intro to rigging math and advanced rigging math coming up in the next couple of months. Then next year, theater lead rigger training, rigging standards, and how to do a rigging advance when you're out on tour or you need to go into a new building. What do you need to know as you're bringing things in? He's also going to be hosting in-person courses because the facility that he has in Bloomington has this adorable classroom space in it already. And so motor class with Dave Carmack and then OSHA 10 with Risky Business, friends that we've met again through USITT because we're all in this quick together world. And also one on how to do rigging inspections because there are roughly, I get the numbers right here in my head. There are roughly 25,000 high schools in the United States and there's maybe a dozen companies that are out doing inspections.
Yeah.
And what we find is frightening, absolutely frightening. I've seen pictures. I've walked into spaces and turned around and walked out of spaces because it was so
Uh-huh.
bad. So, not necessarily that somebody's going to take this class and go out and do inspections, but if you've got the ETCP certification, if you've done installs, because that's part of what the standard says you should have for experience to do an inspection is to actually go out and install the system so you understand how they work on that side. That's going to be a great chance to get some hands on. What do you need to look for? How do you document it? How do you share that information with the school so that they can then get the things remediated and schools have a safe place for us to go and do our magic. We also have something that I'm particularly very, very proud of. We're going to do a week-long summer camp for high school theater teachers and folks that work in the high school level, parent volunteers, anybody else that wants to come to it. Because again, things are changing rapidly. Things we do now are not what we did 5 or 10 years ago, certainly not when I started almost 40 years ago now. So we're going to do a day talking about rigging, a day talking about lighting, of course, a day of carpentry with some hands-on things on all of these, audio going deep into microphones and how you deal with microphones and how you keep kids from breaking microphones, and then wardrobe, because it's an often overlooked part and it is so vitally important that you understand how to work with the performer, how to set them up for success, how to take care of the garments that you're working with, whether it be a hat or shoes or various articles of clothing, how to care for them. And there are things that you and I know because you and I have worked in that realm that those teachers might not know. So 5 day week with the aim being for high school teachers to come and get a really good, solid, broad base everything theater during that week. And also to be surrounded by folks where they can ask the questions, maybe bring pictures of their venues and go, what is this thing hanging on the wall over here? And why does it have a handle and it's not attached to anything? There's a bunch of that out there too. So that's what the DeLong Foundation is doing. We've started. That's the capstone or the umbrella organization. DeLong Academy is what's offering all of these different classes. Some of it's offered online. We're going to be adding materials for K-12 teachers so that they can go and get that information. There's going to be things on there about how to teach drafting, how to teach theater, how to teach rigging, how to teach these different skills, because nobody teaches technical theater pedagogy at all
Mhm.
anywhere that I've been able to find. And
Yeah,
that's different than how to do the skills. So
absolutely.
that's what part of it is. And my official title with that is Director of Education. So my job is to ensure that the quality of everything that we're offering is as high as it can possibly be, that it's meeting the current codes and standards and methodology that we use, and that we're bringing in some of the best teachers in the industry to share their knowledge with the people that are going to come and take the classes or take the classes online.
Excellent. Yeah, I think that's a great opportunity. Again, those short bites of um I think that's so helpful in the like people get into it. Oh, I don't know anything about this. And and right, it's a huge topic. I know a number of people who are choir directors and suddenly,
That was me.
right, suddenly you're doing the musical and suddenly you are building scenery and
Mhm.
well, this has got to fly, and you can just see how quickly that slope um can just get you into a world where you're in way over your head, right? And I think it's so hard, like because there is this the expectation you want to do these things for the kids, and but if it's not done safely, and if we're exposing a level of risk that um someone can get hurt, someone can die, then
Yeah,
it's not worth it, and so
and it's still happening even recently.
yeah.
Uh, Part of my diving into USITT was a guy named Randy Davidson, who was the Health and Safety Commissioner for ages, founded that commission, I believe. And his nickname was Dr. Doom because he always kind of focused on the doom and gloom of things. And I've been called a kinder, gentler Dr. Doom because although I talk about safety, I try to go, here's how we can make it actually work, and here's the best way you can do it in your situation. But
Yeah.
I also work as an expert witness, and again, kind, good hearted people who just don't know that they don't know.
Yeah.
While we're on the subject of school safety, I want to talk about another free resource that's out there.
Excellent.
There's a
Yes.
thing called the National Federation of State High School Associations. And I know that's a big mouthful, but
Say it
NFHS
again.
is
Say it again.
NFHS, National Federation of State High School Associations. So if you go to nfhslearn.com and you search for theater, there'll be a theater safety course that comes up. You might recognize a face that's in the middle of it. It's about 16, 18 very short modules, and it's designed to be used at the high school level for high school students and high school teachers. So it doesn't go into great gory detail about rigging, but you learn how to run a counterweight system in it, and there's a script for the verbiage that you need to use as you're giving those instructions. We talk about firearms and pyro and their appropriate use for high school, and a bunch of other topics in there too. Electrics, um, fundamentals of electricity. Yes, you can kill yourself by sticking your finger in the wrong place, so don't stick your finger in there. And it's free. That's the best thing about that. And the other cool thing about that is if you spend a whopping $20 and become a performing arts member of NFHS, you get a $2 million liability policy.
Ooh,
I tell
excellent.
people about this because the expert witness stuff, you quickly realize that most of those cases get settled out of court for millions of dollars. And
Uh-huh.
it's either the liability policy you own or everything that you own that they take. And I would rather have somebody spend $20, and I would also rather have them get the free education they can get by taking that and hopefully never have this incident. But just in case something would happen, $20 is cheap insurance to get the liability policy for them.
Sure is. Yes. Thank you. That is a great tip. I hope folks are listening to that. Um, yeah, those are awesome opportunities on many levels, right? Um, so again, just if you if you're not looking to do the full now, Chrissy and I both have done university all the way up. So, and I think there is much to be gained from a traditional university experience. So, this is one option. What I love about university, I mean, we spend a lot of time on theory, like why we do it this way, that I think builds future decision making. I try to instill that this is why we do it the way we do.
Mhm.
Um, but I think, like I said earlier, all of the things that you learn, you think, I will never use this again. Um, and my colleague just came in here with the uh, intro stagecraft quiz. Yeah, I named every one of those tools. Can still do it. Those you'd be surprised where those things cross over from one area to another. And I think the people skills that you learn in a university, I think that's a really valuable part of that
For
equation.
people who want to be designers, I think a four-year degree is an excellent investment
Yep.
because it gives you an opportunity to study history and how people learned. And
Right.
if you look at the history that we teach you in K-12 school, it was this war and these guys won and that's why this law exists or that's why this line is drawn on the map. But
Hmm.
in college, hopefully, you get a chance to look at philosophy and psychology. How do we think
Psychology.
about how
Right.
do we get along with other people? How do we work with people whose backgrounds are significantly different from the pale, pasty, white, homogenous town that I grew up in? How do you speak a foreign language? How do you work with people from different parts of the world? Different monetary systems, different measuring systems. All of
Mhm.
those kinds of things you can really get into in great depth in the college level. And one of the things that I think is most valuable is developing the ability to synthesize that information. So when you make a design choice, you can back it up with some rationale that makes sense beyond, well, it looked good to me. And it was the
I
first
like it.
thing on Google.
I like it.
That's not design. Google search is not design, please.
Right.
I use as an example, uh, can't think of his name, the props designer for Hamilton, Jay Duckworth. He's got this YouTube video where he talks about the doctor's case in Hamilton, which is not a period piece. It's anachronistic. It does not belong there timeline wise. But they did it because it was a fast way for the audience to say, oh, that's the doctor coming in.
Hmm.
So being able to justify your decision like that,
Right.
that's what makes a really quality design. Similarly, right on the lighting side, your high school is probably not going to have the same kind of resources that a college is going to be able to expose you to. Even if the college doesn't have it, they're going to help you make those connections where you can learn how do you work with a video wall? How do you work with moving lights? How do you work with more advanced equipment,
Hmm.
lasers and LEDs and drones and all the fancy little widgets that we're coming out with now? Your college is going to help you make those connections. So if design is your goal, please find a four-year school and go have a good time. Think about masters if you want to be a college teacher. That's why I went and got my master's, because I knew I loved teaching and didn't want to have somebody say, oh, you can't do that because you don't have your master's degree.
Uh-huh.
But also, my master's program was how I had my formal technical education, because my undergrad was vocal performance and then music education, and neither of them taught me anything that I needed to know on the tech theater side. So I had,
Yeah, that's a jump to the left.
yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's a um I think that's a steep curve, but it's not unusual either. There are a lot of people who pursue one thing for a while and then do something else. Go out, get self-trained, right? Work for a while, like, maybe I do want to be a designer, right? You can go back. Universities are not going away. They
Right.
will continue to exist. Um, and maybe go at the time that is right for you, you know. But
Mhm.
that doesn't preclude being involved in technical theater in your career. So you mentioned it earlier, about, 30% left the industry. Um, there is such a time of opportunity for young folks. It's amazing to me, when I was coming up, um, you know, it was, it took a lot of years to get established enough to get somebody to give you an opportunity. And now there's such a need for hands that, um, and I think also that mentality around training on the job is a little bit different now. And,
And
I
more
think,
of us have learned how to be good mentors.
yes,
We've learned how to reach out. We've learned to go to schools. We've learned to go to colleges. We go to the career fairs. We go to the Thespian Society. We say, "Hey, you've got potential. Have you thought about doing this?" I'm not sure if you've run into this, but one of the problems I have here in Wisconsin is I've got guidance counselors saying you can't earn a living at it. Here I am. I live in Appleton, Wisconsin, and I earn a
right,
fine living working in technical theater and the tangentially related things, right? I do some AV things. I do some teaching. I do some writing.
right,
My house is paid off.
right. I mean, there are plenty of people working in theater full time making six figures,
Oh yeah,
right? And these are not like, we're not talking, that they're designing, Oscar award winning shows, or that they're, doing like
yeah.
people on a tour, right? Like, you can make a good living in this industry. Um, you shared with me earlier some numbers you about, um how
Yes.
much money there is in the entertainment industry.
Yes, and I have to thank Michael Kelly from North Carolina School of the Arts for telling me about this. $2.3 trillion of the global entertainment industry, $2.3 trillion, of which 8.3 billion is theater in the United States, and only 1.9 billion of that is Broadway. So
Yeah.
everybody focuses on Broadway, but there's a lot more theater going on in the country, and there are a lot more jobs. Broadway's 43 houses.
Right.
We have 20,000 plus high schools.
Mm.
Almost all of them put on 3 shows a year.
Yeah.
There's more theater produced at the high school level than at any other level in the United States. That's something I learned from Randy Davidson. And there are opportunities everywhere you go. And it's not just theater, right? It's working for the bands that come through. It might be that you go and you're the audio person for the covered band that plays in the bars every weekend and you have a great time running the soundboard for them. Or it could be you're doing lighting design for that. Could be you're in a house of worship. Many of those are actually full time jobs. It could be that you're dealing with sports. I got an eye opener for this. I was asked to be the house lights person at the Resch Center, which is our big uh, athletic facility up in Green Bay that's next door to the Lambeau Field. And what had been just go in and push the house lights up, when I walked in the door, there's 8 people in that room. They've got people that are doing the lettering that goes on top. There's one that's doing video switching for the live things that are happening. There's another video switcher for recorded content. There's a guy who's calling what needs to be when. There's the announcer. There's the person who's running the live audio feedback, but he's also got an audio feedback that goes into what's going to the video content. And that's then being displayed to displays all through the venue. And I'm like, mind blowing.
Yep. And as my colleague is doing on gigs, there's the guy who puts the mic on the ref, you know,
Yes,
right? Like that's a gig.
it is. It is. As is being the mascots that go around and do the things that they do,
Yep.
people that are involved with fundraising that put on benefits,
Hmm.
the folks that do weddings. There are people that just do weddings full time, ceremonies, things we think about, like you mentioned, the Oscars, those
Uh-huh.
kinds of events, the televised specials,
Yes.
things like the Olympics,
Hmm.
Super Bowl. We just hosted the NFL draft here. That was about 2 months worth of pretty much full time work for a couple dozen people. And then when they actually did the final load in and load out of that, it was probably 100. Um, things like WWE, right? 220 people to load up WWE. That's how a lot of our stagehands get started up here is we need to come
Yeah.
and push a box. And they go, oh, I'm just pushing a box. It's not a big deal. Well, you better know where to put your hands on that box because if you put it in the wrong place, you could get pinched. It could be bad. All of the kinds of theme parks, right? So we've got Disney, which everybody knows, and they're a great place to take your family. But then there's also more regional and local ones that go along with that. Plus, you've got different ones all around the globe.
Hmm.
The cruise ship. Oh, good heavens, cruise ships are awesome. I tell a lot of the college students if you can do a cruise ship right out of college, take all of that money that you earn on the cruise ship and put it toward your student loans, you might be able to pay
Payment.
your student loans quickly because you're going to get it before it gets all the interest added onto it. Plus, you get to work with state of the art equipment and you get to see the world.
Don't
And
have living expenses.
oh,
So yeah.
yeah, the things that they're able to do on those cruise ships are amazing. Casinos, right? Vegas and all of the different shows that are going on in Vegas, similar kinds of places like that where you've got any kind of tourist attraction town. You might have like the Old West show or um, whatever your area is known for. There might
Even
be some kind of
even like
event.
aquariums, right? Like a SeaWorld type aquarium, they have shows.
Children's Museum.
Yes.
I have a friend who designs museum exhibits.
Yes.
He used to design rock tours, but now he designs museums.
We take our lighting design class. They go over to the Abraham Lincoln Museum in
Oh,
Springfield,
yes.
which is a fabulous museum, and they are using like old lighting tricks like Sykes and things, but also live performers. So yeah.
Great conversation with the guy who was the lighting director for the Dayton U.S. Air Force Museum.
Yes.
So his job was to make sure all the planes were appropriately lit. And he was telling me some of the um, physics that go into that, how he determines which lights need to go where, and then going in and maintaining them because he has to be very careful about how he's maneuvering his lift around these multi-million dollar antique.
Yeah.
Just
Oh,
mind fun stuff. Um,
yeah. Yeah.
Working with VIPs. right? If you've got stage management skills, the
Yes.
same guy who is the tour manager for Metallica takes Ted Neely around to do video playbacks of Jesus Christ Superstar and handle the audience because why
Yeah.
not? So it's we don't always think about these things because folks say theater, you're going to work in theater. There aren't many jobs in theater. The jobs are there, but it's also in all of these other allied areas, and there's probably more money in the allied areas.
Um, Even conventions, right? Like we don't think of it as much because we bring our own stage managers. But I have a friend who do a Broadway show, and then he'll go out and do conventions, right? You
Mhm.
tell the keynote speaker when to walk on. You make sure that they, have the microphone. You All of those jobs. If you think about some of in fact, one of my alums works in Chicago in the very, very large conference center there, and he's just doing AV in a conference center,
Oh yeah.
and he loves it, you know?
Hotels also. Hotels will have AV people that will come in and set up the
Yes.
ballrooms there, training rooms, breakout rooms, all of those. Um,
Yep.
AV integration, which is the fancy way of saying how to make all the AV equipment play well with one another.
Yes.
There's a whole programming language, a group of programming languages, depending upon which manufacturer you're using. So the joke in the industry is it's the Trons, Extron and Crestron, and then
Uh-huh.
there's some similar companies like that. If you can do Crestron programming or Extron programming, you're really good at it. That's a six-figure job.
Yeah.
If you're a really good drafts person, Vectorworks, AutoCAD, Revit, those pieces of software, that's also high up there. If it's not six figures, it's going to be darn close getting started. And you need to have the knowledge of the mechanical things that you're working with, right? So if you're drafting for homes and they're wood framed homes, you need to understand how wood works. Engineering, oh my gosh, those guys who work as engineers in our industry, they have the best job. It's so much fun to hear about the things that they've worked on and where they've gone. And the folks that were able to design the things we're able to put together, because, the production triangle, right? Time, talent, money, pick two,
Yep.
we're really great creative people. So if we've got enough time, and sometimes you get to do these events like the Super Bowl or the Olympics, where it's, yeah, there's not really a finite budget. You just make it happen and make it pretty. Um, but just the way that they're able to put things together and the imagination that we're able to put into it. I tell people, if you give me enough of the two of the three, I can probably make it appear to happen. Won't
Uh-huh.
necessarily make the elephant disappear, but I can make it look like it can disappear.
Yeah,
I love talking
absolutely.
about magicians.
Yeah, was it 2 years ago? Was it 2 years ago? Like, oh, and it can't be on the field. Halftime show, but
Yes.
not on the field. Yeah.
Yes.
And they did it, absolutely. Um, you mentioned one earlier we were talking, the trucking, like,
Yes.
you know, that is a specific job in this industry, right?
Mhm.
Um, yeah. Obviously, you need some education because you'll have to, get a CDL license but yeah.
And a lot of those folks actually own their trucks, so they're independent businesses, and
Mhm.
then they contract with one of the companies to have them do the routes. I learned a lot about that when I was out on tour with. Uh, I did 3 Broadway tours, but especially when I was out with Warhorse because our lead driver was somebody I had a lot of interaction with, and so I would just ask questions and, "How did you get started in this industry? Why did you do this?" And I know that for the company that he was working for, you had to have 2 years of accident free over the road experience and be an owner operator. And then you went and talked with the company about, like to come and work with you. So it's not just taking anybody off the street. We need people that have specialized skills and really great mastery of the crafts that they're working in.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you are that truck driver who has that full understanding of what's going to happen when it gets delivered or what's happening on the out, or that only makes you better, it really does. So, well, Christy, I want to thank you for subbing for Tyler tonight. Um,
Thank
you know,
you.
you did a great job. And of course, I've really enjoyed our conversation. So thank you so much for that. Next month, November 3rd, is our next chat. And our guest will be Jess Gertz. Jess is a associate costume designer. He's a costume designer, but associate costume designer. Recently just on the Waiting for Godot, with Keanu Reeves that just opened in New York, and O'Mary. So if any of you have seen any of the all of the guest stars who've been cycling through O'Mary, we will talk to Jess about those put-ins of new stars into an existing piece. So thank you everybody. Appreciate it. Have a good night.
Thanks, everyone. Bye bye.